calls it a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Matt Moreno. Matt, today we're talking about what I would say is not the most important decision the Dodgers will make, but maybe the most interesting: to tender or non-tender Cody Bellinger, who is going into his final year of arbitration. They have to make that decision by Friday. That's the deadline. So before we get into what should they do, let me play a little game with you, Matt, just to, I think, set the stage a little bit. One of my favorite things, I'm going to give you player A and player B. I'm going to give you slash lines from 2022, and you tell me which of these two players you would prefer. Okay, so player A hit 210 with a 265 on base percentage and a 389 slugging percentage. Player B hit 244 with a 258 on base percentage and a 365 slugging percentage. Looking at these two slash lines, which of these two players offensively would you prefer to have?
Man, it's tough. I guess, do you want the higher batting average, or do you want a little bit more of on base and some slugging? I'll go with player A.
Okay, so do you know which one? One of these is Cody Bellinger. Do you know which one is Cody Bellinger?
I think A is Bellinger.
Yep. Do you know who B is?
Because you're presenting this, is it going to be Trace Thompson?
It's not. Player B is Hanser Alberto, a guy that the Dodgers just decided to not pay $2 million to be on the team this year. And as you can see, you could make a compelling case that Alberto's offensive line last season, in a much smaller sample size, was better than Bellinger's. He hit 34 points higher, dropped 30 points in slugging percentage, so it's kind of like pick your poison there. But to me, that sort of sets the stage for the Bellinger conversation, just so we know what we're talking about. So let's get to the question at hand. The Dodgers have a decision to make by Friday. Should they tender Cody Bellinger a contract or not? For those unfamiliar with this process, Cody Bellinger is under team control for up to one more season. That would be next season. Because he is in the fourth year, he's a Super 2 guy, he's under arbitration. The Dodgers have to decide whether to tender him a contract or not. If they tender him a contract, then they would offer him a dollar number. He would counter with a dollar number. And if the two sides can't come to an agreement before a deadline, then it would go to arbitration and a panel would decide how much Cody Bellinger makes. So once you tender him the contract, you are basically guaranteeing that you are going to pay him some amount of money. If you non-tender him, he becomes a free agent just for the dollar amount. So you know, arbitration year number 3, he made $17 million. MLB Trade Rumors is estimating he'll make upwards of $18 million. Technically, he could get a decrease in salary of a maximum of 20%. So basically, the minimum he could make next year is $13.6 million. Just as a reference point, basically nobody's number ever goes down. People are estimating it to go up. So with all of that in mind, Matt, should the Dodgers tender Cody Bellinger a contract between now and Friday?
I don't think so. I think it makes just the most sense to non-tender him for several reasons. So I'll leave it there, and I'll wait until we kind of get into maybe the different scenarios.
Okay, so you're going non-tender of Cody Bellinger, but you actually have an interesting take because you would actually, that doesn't mean Cody Bellinger's gone from the Dodgers in your estimation. Walk me through your thought process on non-tendering Cody Bellinger, and then I imagine trying to negotiate a new free agent contract with him.
Yeah, so I would non-tender him because, like you said, he technically could have his pay reduced by 20%. And if you look at his season, you would say, oh man, he struggled this and that. But I looked at from 2021 to 2022, like his stats this season were better than last season.
Yep.
So statistically, like there's basically no merit. As much as Bellinger struggled, there's no merit for the Dodgers to say, well, we need to pay you less than what you received when you got your last increase, because he outperformed 2021.
Yeah.
So he's going to get some increase, right? And whatever, I mean, maybe it would end up being like 200,000 instead of the 1.1 million that MLB Trade Rumors projected. So I think you non-tender him. He becomes a free agent, but you non-tender him with the idea of let's re-sign you to maybe a 2 or 3 year contract, a lower AAV, but potentially a little bit more guaranteed money that you'll end up receiving.
Okay, so and the average annual value for you, are we talking like $10 million a year? Are we talking like $8 or $9 million a year?
I'd be willing to do like 15-ish. I mean, I think there needs to be some give and take if you're the team, because you are non-tendering him, and like, not that you owe him anything by any means, but I think like the Dodgers, Andrew Friedman, I think, has tried to operate in good faith for the most part with players. And so I could see them, saying, hey, like if you not accept this because it's out of his control, the Dodgers could non-tender him and say, thanks for spending time in our organization. Good luck somewhere else. And that would be it.
Yeah.
I think they would be willing to maybe up the AAV a little bit if they knew they were non-tendering him.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough part because my question is, who are you negotiating against? Like, once he becomes a free agent, you don't owe him $15 million a year if you don't think he's going to get above 10 anywhere else. For me, the answer is pretty simple, and I've actually been early on this one. I was talking about non-tendering Cody Bellinger like 4 to 6 months ago. So to me, it's an easy non-tender, and I actually wouldn't be all that interested in bringing him back. And I'll walk you through some of the numbers here. These are not going to be unfamiliar to people, but just for context, as you said, he got a raise after the 2021 season. That was a 542 OPS. That was the second worst mark in all of baseball among guys with as many at-bats as Bellinger had. 2022, the OPS increased 112 points. He improved to the 12th worst mark among qualified hitters. There were 130 qualified hitters in baseball. He had the 12th worst OPS. His weighted runs created plus was the 8th worst mark. His batting average was the 6th worst. His strikeout rate was the 10th worst. His on-base percentage was the 2nd worst on-base percentage among qualified hitters last season. You want to look at StatCast, 39th percentile in hard hit, 33rd percentile in whiff rate, 14th percentile in strikeout rate. So the same guy who in 2019 had an OPS over 1,000 with 47 homers, 121 runs, 115 RBIs, 15 steals. All those numbers have come crashing down. His strikeout rate has gone up 11%. His walk rate has gone down 7.5%. So that's the negative offensively. That's the he's just as good as Hanser Alberto, who they didn't want to pay $2 million to argument. The flip side is the defense, which I know is why you're saying, hey, I'm interested in keeping him around. 92nd percentile outs above average, according to StatCast. That's at a premium position. Obviously, his speed is still there. You could point to postseason performance, a couple huge hits in 2020. I stand by the biggest hit in my life was that home run in Game 7. But you have to keep in mind, he also wasn't very good in the 2020 postseason, aside from a couple big hits. 2021, amazing, 900 OPS and 39 plate appearances. Career, though, 650 OPS in the postseason. So I think the argument to me is he's just not very good. The idea of paying him 10, 12, 14, $18 million for a guy who is one of the worst hitters in all of baseball, even if he's also one of the best defenders, doesn't add up to me. I know the obvious follow-up question is, well, who takes his spot? Like, who's going to play center field? I'll throw a couple options at you. I know a lot of people are going to go straight to James Outman, who had like 4 plate appearances in the major league level, and everybody's ready to crown him as the heir apparent. I was talking to Justin Lorber briefly. This is what his midseason prospect write-up said. Quote, Outman's power, speed, defense combo gives him a high floor as a big league bench outfielder with the chance for more if he can limit strikeouts and keep his walk rate where he's had it. He had him as the number 21 prospect in the system at midseason. I texted him. I said, what do you think about the Outman-Bellinger conversation? He said, Bellinger put up 1.7 Fangraph wins above replacement this year. I wouldn't guarantee it, but that's certainly something that is in Outman's range of outcomes. So you've got that. Can you get the same level of wins above replacement production from Outman on a rookie minimum contract that you could get from Bellinger? I agree with Justin. I think that's firmly within the range. I think he gives you 85% of the defense that Bellinger gives and maybe 115% of the offense, which admittedly isn't saying much. Trace Thompson, another guy we could talk about, 860 OPS in 255 plate appearances. Have to point out his strikeout rate was almost 10% higher than Bellinger's was. His walk rate was better, though. Unsustainable batting average on balls in play. A guy with a career OPS 130 points lower than this year. So are you going to bet on Trace Thompson? But again, Trace Thompson, another guy you could probably get 80 to 90% of the defense out of in center field. Can he give you equivalent or slightly more offense than Bellinger? Seems like a pretty safe bet compared to where Bellinger is. Obviously, Chris Taylor is the other guy that you could factor into this mix, who is under contract, already have to be paying him, already going to be on the 26-man roster. Do you just trust him in center field and say, look, again, the offense it can't be worse than Bellinger? So I'll throw all that, and I know I'm rambling here, Matt, but I'm going to say one more thing because I think this is the point that I keep bringing up in every free agent conversation we have. We have to look at the 40-man roster, and we have to look at the 26-man roster, because while we could just say, well, it's just, it's just money, it's just this. Roster spots are at a premium for an organization like the Dodgers. And 40-man roster spots, they just protected some guys in the Rule 5 draft, but also 26-man rosters spots. They've only got 13 position players that they can carry. So if you look at it, you've got Barnes and Smith, Freeman, Lux, Muncy, Betts, Taylor. That's 7 guys who are absolute locks. Add in whoever's playing shortstop. That's 8 guys who are absolute locks. I think Justin Turner's back, so that's 9. Then you've got Vargas, you've got Trace, that's 11. Edwin Rios, Michael Busch, James Outman. Like, you don't have enough room for all of these guys already. And so if you're bringing back Bellinger to take away opportunities, plate appearances, and a roster spot from the Outmans and the Bushes of the world, to me, it just adds up and you say, surely we can use that $18 million on a starting pitcher or something more effective. So I'm going to rest my voice because I've been talking for far too long, but I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Those are definitely fair points. I think with me, I'm not necessarily convinced that they'd be willing to give Outman, basically an everyday or pretty regular job in center field. I could see him maybe coming up at some point, if there's an injury or halfway through the season or just later in the season. And I think especially if, the Hanser Alberto decision, I think bodes well for Miguel Vargas. And so if Miguel Vargas is up with the team, I'm not sure if the Dodgers would want another really young, basically rookie, obviously, filling potentially such a significant role on an everyday basis. And, frankly, I did say that Bellinger's AAV, I would be willing to do up to $15 million. But like you said, if you're not necessarily negotiating against anybody, then that number could certainly come down. And I think maybe at that point, maybe you're more open to it. And maybe just in general, it makes more sense for the Dodgers as well. Trace, I have my reservations. I think the potential is there, but there is like the strikeouts. I mean, he knew, he admitted, hey, I need to cut down my strikeouts, and that stuck out to me. And then I told you in one of our videos we did during the season, then I kind of started paying attention, and I felt like after Trace made that comment, his strikeout numbers almost doubled, and it was just man, poor guy, he knows he needs to fix it, he wants to fix it, and it just continued to pile up. And I'm somebody, and there may be a small group of us who just really values and believes in how good of a defensive center fielder Bellinger is, and how much impact that can have on a game, and specifically in the playoffs. I think that's when you really want the best of the best that you have. And I think this wouldn't necessarily have been such a glaring issue had the rest of the Dodgers lineup, both throughout the year and in the playoffs, collectively met their expectations. If Max Muncy didn't get off to such a slow start, if Justin Turner didn't get off to a slow start, if Chris Taylor didn't have his, inconsistency throughout the year, because if everybody else is hitting, like I've said before, every team has a number 8 or number 9 hitter that is kind of, struggling, or just, not really, you're not necessarily counting on to give you a whole lot of production. And so I think the Dodgers have the talent to withstand that. It's just, we didn't see that play out this year.
Yeah. And to be clear to something you said, I'm skeptical of James Outman being an everyday major league outfielder. I'm skeptical of Trace Thompson putting up anything close to what he put up last year. I'm skeptical about Chris Taylor bouncing back, but I'm also skeptical about Cody Bellinger. And so the bottom line for me is I would rather pay $500,000 for a guy I'm skeptical of in center field than $18 million for a guy I'm skeptical of. Because I think there's actually a compelling case that we should have less confidence in Bellinger. As bad as Trace Thompson's career numbers are, Bellinger has been worse for 2 consecutive years. And so even if you say, oh, Trace Thompson, the strikeout rate's unsustainable, he's a 650 OPS guy. Again, Bellinger was a 540 OPS guy for a full season in 2021, and he was a 650 OPS guy in 2022. So 2022, Cody Bellinger was career average Trace Thompson. One of those guys is going to make $17 million than the other next season if Bellinger is tendered a contract. I would just take my chances and say, let's put that money towards the starting pitcher. Let's go replace Tyler Anderson in the rotation. Does that $17 million free up some extra cash to go get a Justin Verlander? Possibly. I'm more interested there. So that's where I land. I'm with you. I value the defense. I just don't value at $18 million. And when the offense is a 0 and probably really a negative, because you said every team has a number 9 hitter that's bad. Let me reiterate. Cody Bellinger had the second worst on-base percentage of 130 qualified hitters in the league. So we're not talking about he's an average number 9 hitter. He is one of the worst hitters in all of baseball 2 consecutive seasons. And so I agree the Dodgers can withstand that black hole in the number 9 spot, but they don't have to. They have an out right now. They could get out of this contract and not have to pay him $18 million. If they were already paying him, fine, so be it. But for me, I'm out. If they want to negotiate, fine. To me, I'm could we do 2 years and, could we do 1 year at $9 million, $10 million? I think that's the max I would go, is $10 million on a 1-year deal. If he wants 2 or 3 years, I got to drop the AAV. Maybe it's a 1 year, $10 million deal, and then a player option, that kind of thing. So that's where I'm at. That's the bottom line for me.
Yeah, that's fair. And I was getting ready to ask you, like, is there a number, or are there set like contract terms that maybe you'd be back at, you'd be willing to bring him back in? And I think the numbers you threw out honestly are fair and reasonable. And like, who knows, maybe that will end up being the case. Cause I think my suspicion is I think Bellinger enjoys like playing for the Dodgers, being in LA and just everything that kind of comes with it. And so if there isn't a market for him, then, you know, who knows, he may have to come back. I know that there's some rumblings that the Cubs are sort of monitoring what the Dodgers are going to do, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll come with a big check for him. Right. So it'll definitely be interesting. And I think, for me, it's, I don't want to sound repetitive, but it's interesting that I've definitely come around to your side of like, I do think they will non-tender him, whereas I didn't think that was going to be the case. But like I've said before, the benching in Game 4 of the NLDS kind of spoke volumes. Yeah.
And again, the Dodgers could tender him a contract, and they have lots of money, and this could not matter at all. But I just, again, as I said at the beginning, I'll close with this. I don't think this is the most important decisions the Dodgers will make all offseason, but I do think it is the most interesting, because this is one of those guys that historically they just say, yeah, of course Cody Bellinger's coming back. Of course we're paying him the money. But this is one of those opportunities for the Dodgers to say, this is one of our guys. This is one of the faces of the franchise for the past, 6 or 7 years. Are we going to just cut loose and not bring him back? Interesting to see. That's Matt Moreno. My name is Jeff Spiegel. As always, we appreciate you joining us. Stay tuned to DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue1958 in social media, and of course, subscribe and ring the notification bell here as well, because as soon as Bellinger and the Dodgers have a decision, have clarity on what the future looks like, we'll be breaking it all down here. Thanks again for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and of course, go Dodgers.